continuation of a trusted workflow for users. You might need context from the other area that you were working on,
Like, do you need your existing customer to do
Yeah,
user
sometimes you need
testing?
existing user context because you could have a product where there is some type of training required to just understand the product in general. So
Mhm.
then the feature itself would have some type of context required with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do challenge that. I mean, I think that if you make something intuitive enough, maybe a user that's never seen the thing before could do it. But I think it'll depend on.
So I will set up something on your website in your products to be continuously recruiting people to do the user test. It's a user testing that never turns off. It's always on so that you can collect feedback that way. And then secondly, for your ongoing project, like your prototype, something you need right away, like something you have to happen today. I need 20 samples, give quick feedback on this prototype. That you do it through our panel providers, and you order people through the incentive program.
Use your computer or your web browser specifically, simulate using the product for that user. It's not standard practice. It's something, we've tested and tried. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space. And I think that it's hard to always have a user there or even to drive one yourself because of your own assumptions. So taking the Figma prototype and then having a click through for that, even if it's a user that is kind of on the business side, that's often not enough because they're going to assume and know a lot of things. They're going to know things that a new user might know, or, they're going to know a lot of things that don't represent the state of a real user testing your product.
Welcome to UX Stories. I'm your host, Lee Hong Hicken. I've spent my career obsessed with how we understand what users actually think. When Chris and I helped scale usertesting.com, we thought we had it figured all out. But AI has changed everything. The speed of building is now 10 times faster than the speed of listening. So Chris and I built Bayset. We want to use vibe testing to match the speed of vibe coding. I'm here to talk to visionary leaders who want to deliver great experiences to their customers. My guest today is Stephen Lamb, a product leader at Addepar. Stephen is at the forefront of wealth management technology, helping build a platform that tracks trillions of dollars for the world's most sophisticated investors and advisors. In a world where data is everything, Stephen focused on how to make that data meaningful and actionable. Stephen, beyond your leadership title and impressive track record of building amazing products, who are you as a product leader and what kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah. So as a product leader, I think of myself as an inventor. I think of myself as, when I was a kid, I'd watch shows like Inspector Gadget or Dexter's Laboratory. And I always thought of myself as an inventor or a creative that's sort of trapped in the shoes, or I can't say trapped, but an inventor or creative that's sort of trapped in the shoes of a technologist is kind of how I thought myself. So me as a product leader, I love the position I'm in because I get to kind of work on the more innovative things. But I think of myself as a leader that applies creativity to business outcome and user outcome led sort of decision making. I think that's the simplest way to put it. Meaning, I really like to think of myself as an agency or a creative agency that's really
Mm.
focused on user needs, but user needs as it intersects with more boring or mundane tech. But I think there's joy you could find in everything. But I think of myself as someone that can find the joy in the situations that most would think are a bit more mundane, and really being that creative outlet for companies. So that's how I think of myself as a product leader.
Interesting. So you're like a created inventor for your users, but yet I like the contrast. So yet you are in this, kind of a wealth tech. You really have a unique challenge because you need to innovate quickly to stay ahead. I think usually like fintech, wealth tech is usually very innovative, but you also have a zero margin for error when it comes to those financial data and trust. So how do you balance the vibe coding pressure for AI-driven speed with the necessary to make sure your product experience is also 100% right? So I don't know if the vibe coding and then the speed pressure has come to your product building cycle yet, or everything pretty much stay the same today.
So we experiment extensively with tools like Cloud Code, Codex. We work closely with like Amazon and Databricks teams, even Google DeepMind. I'd say from my end or from our company's end, it's really been a matter of non-negotiables. I think that when it comes to like your customer data and the sensitive data about your customers, you'd be very careful there and almost exclusionary from a lot of your systems, unless, it's something that they want to experience themselves and really help them to understand the trade-off. So I think it's kind of like two or three pieces. I think first big piece is having, again, those non-negotiables around your customer data. And then also where people are banking on or trusting your system for things like calculations and accuracy. There's a
Mhm.
lot of deterministic code and infrastructure that runs that. So you still have to have a deterministic core where people can audit and trace and know things that are happening, and customer data, make sure it's sensitivity there. But if you think about everything else in terms of how fast you want to build a front end UI or
Mhm.
a upload button or a new screen, we can use those technologies pretty relentless for that, so
Mhm.
we've used it a lot to basically work on, fixes, bugs, new features. We've been finding a lot of value when you're working on things that are brand new. So if you're working on things that are not married to some of the complexity of your existing system, like, hey, we want to start thinking about a new product, it's been perfect for that because, you're not as tethered. And then as long as you're being careful about your guidelines for using sensitive data and any guidelines for anything that needs to be calculated, that's been key. And I think the other thing is like, you would say, okay, well, deterministic calculations and things that you do in like the finance system are important. Yes.
Mhm.
But it doesn't have to be a hindrance where you cannot be 100% certain, because not even on a deterministic system, things aren't 100% certain. For where you think it can't be certain, you just need to really be transparent in coaching to the user. So if you're able to let the users understand how you came up with a number or backed into it, they're usually more trusting because the cost sometimes for a user to do a very 20-hour job and making that happen in minutes, the cost for them to have some type of way to look at, what you've done for them, that time save is sometimes better than actually having a perfect system.
Mhm.
So this is a space where it works really good. And I think the companies that have had the opportunity to build a lot of trust with users and a reputation for their, more predictable side are in a perfect opportunity to, not only vibe code, but also to just implement more and more AI features for their
That
users.
that's really well said, Stephen. So you're saying not just like building fast, but you also want to make sure you deliver value to the customers in the sense that you save them time, you
Mhm,
build trust to the customers. So
mhm,
for a lot of, I've heard some people saying like when we are building something small, incremental change, we oftentimes don't test it with a user test
mhm,
because they were like, oh, we already know what users want, and the change is so small and the engineering effort time doesn't need to be protected. We just launch it and we later on look at the product usage to see if we did it right. But the problem is you had to deliver so much bad experiences to show up in the product usage to know, oh, we have delivered a bad experience. So how do you know in the product building side to know? I guess maybe
mhm.
directly. Like, do you do any user tests to know you will build the trust, you will save value, save time to your customers, that your customer think, yes, the way you design this, the way you build this product will save me money, will build trust for me. How do you know you did this before you even launch it?
Yeah, so I have thoughts here. There's things that we personally do and don't do, and things that I think could work, or they're like if I look at the current day and age, like we're moving fast with building things, but we also need to move fast with making sure that things are going to be good for customers.
Right.
At our company, we personally do something called a sentiment survey, which is something that's a bit more lagging indicator or looking backwards, right?
Hmm.
And we're learning from that, like people really, UX sentiment, like people really care about like how convenient or inconvenient or usable your product is, right? So we've learned through usability back testing that there is, for from some areas where we really thought or assumed things were great, they're actually not that great for the users. So yeah, we're trying to figure out better ways to sort of prevent that, especially as velocity increases. I think it honestly has been an afterthought for a lot of development teams in terms of how do you think about usability of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Things that I've experimented with personally to kind of counter that is what I call synthetic user personas. So
Mm,
some
yeah.
of what I've experimented with is creating personas based on your users and their actual feedback, right?
Hmm.
And then using tools that can look at your screen or can use your computer or
Hmm.
your web browser specifically, simulate using the product for that user. It's not standard practice. It's something, we've tested and tried. I think there's a lot of opportunity in that space. And I think that it's hard to always have a user there or even to drive one yourself because of your own assumptions. So
Hmm.
taking the Figma prototype and then having a click through for that, even if it's a user that is kind of on the business side, that's
Hmm.
often not enough because they're going to assume and know a lot of things. They're going to know things that a new user might know, or, like they're going to know a lot of things that like don't represent the state of a real user testing your product.
Yeah.
So I think one of the most promising things I've seen or just played around with is definitely around synthetic user, or let's call it vibe usability
Vibe
testing.
user. Okay, vibe user. Okay,
Vibe
cool.
user testing. Yeah, I think that's
Yeah,
a directional thing. I've seen
cool.
Reforge companies think through that, but like I think that's definitely a big opportunity for people to think through. I think
Uh-huh.
the thing that I've learned in just sort of testing is that, when you're using, let's say for instance, a tool like Cloud Code or something,
Yeah.
it's really focused on developing working software. It's really focused on sometimes implementing the best practice it can understand, but it doesn't
Hmm.
understand your best practice or your opinions. And then it's good at debugging, but it's not really great at being a user because that's what humans are for. Yeah,
Yes.
to some
Yeah.
extent. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity to figure out
To,
how to keep teams there because we learned even, like I said, that sentiment survey. I
hmm
think that the sentiment in some areas weren't great. And those areas were the areas where you couldn't, or you always can, but they're the areas where we probably chose not to pause to do the usability testing. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
validated usability testing is very important. It also validated that there's more that people are going to need to do as things increase. And
Yeah, totally. Steven, you nailed the nails on the head. I'm thinking like the surveys is a little bit lagging. It's like after things has happened. And also sometimes I feel like you can't take the customer's word for it. Sometimes I'm watching the usability testing, we're asking how easy to navigate the platform. Like 5 out of 5, very easy. I was like, no, I'm looking at you. You did it wrong. Right. Like in my face, you did it wrong. I'm watching the video, you're doing it wrong, right? So like you can't really take the word for it. You have to observe how they do it, why they do it, think aloud. So usability testing is great. And you mentioned about synthetic persona doing those get quick feedback. The elephant in the room is why don't you do Figma prototype testing with the real user that fit your persona, real human being? Why do you do with the synthetic one? Is it because of speed? Is it because you don't have time to do it, or is it because you can't reach humans to do that?
it's a triangle. I mean, if you look at my wrist, it's all about the time, right? So
Okay, okay.
if you think about it, unless you have a really, I can't say it almost like TaskRabbit looking service, but if you
Mhm,
think about it, you have to coordinate the time with your user or at least asynchronously with your user to get their feedback.
mhm,
You have to make sure that so if you think about it, like sometimes surveys, like, even if we just said, hey, we have a survey with a great gift card to kind of give you a prize if you just give some private feedback. Sometimes the completion rate is just not really high, for some of those things. So I think for us, it's almost like a struggle to find the time for the users to make the tests. And then also the time it takes to build and prepare the tests. And then
mhm,
the last is if you just scale that up to the number of things that you need to test or whatever,
mhm,
I think
mhm.
it kind of adds up. But I think the
I
biggest bottleneck's definitely going to be the availability of users because people will make time to do usability testing with, like, product teams want to make time, but it's a
mhm.
matter of the users being available, especially in a B2B
B2B
sense.
world. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
So I know like services like user testing.com, you can recruit panel people and the test will be back in an hour or two. The problem with user testing is then you had to watch the video, which take time. But AI is very good at analyzing the videos and you don't need to watch it. So imagine today there's a service, the AI will help you launch these tests, or the test is always on. It recruit people on your website in your product and the tests go out and every day automatically you get a video recording the AI help you analyze automatically send to your Slack channel. Is that something good or you feel like still too much time?
I think it could be good, but it will depend on the things that you're testing. For instance, there's certain things that I do believe you need certain context on in order to effectively test. Like for instance, if it's a continuation of a trusted workflow for users, you might need context from the other area that you were working on.
Like, do you need your existing customer to
Yeah,
do the
sometimes you need
test?
existing user context because you could have a product where there is some type of training required to just understand the product in general.
Mm-hmm.
So then the feature itself would have some type of context required with it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do challenge that. I mean, I think that if you make something intuitive enough, maybe a user that's never seen the thing before could do it. But I think it'll depend on how the surface. For instance, if you're looking at, let's call it a tool for doing trades, and you're building that, it might be easier to test the tool from scratch for a new user
Hmm.
versus testing the preference for a setting, assuming the user has context for the tool.
Yeah,
So for an
totally.
existing tool, an incremental feature might be harder to test that way than if it was to test something that is a little bit larger that you could connect to a specific persona and or archetype on.
And then in terms of a time on the clockwise, what is acceptable turnaround time from the time you launch the test to the result of back? What is acceptable time for you guys?
So imagine if you have software and you could release, I mean, you could release almost daily with a lot of software, but you probably have some type of communication cadence. Let's say, for instance, it's a couple, bi-weekly maybe, or, let's say it's monthly for some systems.
Hmm.
Imagine you have a team that's working on maybe 2 week sprint. You probably would want to have a turnaround time for a sizable enough sample
Hmm.
such that you could pivot or adjust in that 2 week sprint. Because what's going to happen is people will build features faster, but because you're moving into a world where engineers are going to start orchestrating or almost like become sorcerers, like
Yes.
warlocks or like people that have controlling these things, you're
Yep.
going to be doing more. So,
Yep.
so it will be a thing where you just have to figure out. Basically, I think that as people go faster, you need feedback faster. So I
Yep.
think that at a minimum, so in a current usability study, I mean, you could probably do a quick test with a couple of users and, assuming the users are perfectly available, you could
Hmm.
probably do something in a day or two, right?
Hmm.
Between the
Hmm.
scheduling, hey, let's get on the call, let's do a recap of that, a couple days. So I'd say that you probably want to at least beat that, match or beat
Okay.
it. Like, because if you could basically scale it to where even if it took the same amount of time, let's say
Hmm.
3 days turnaround time between scheduling and whatever to do it 2 or 3 users. But if you're able to do in that same time, 2 to 3 days with more
That's
users,
Yeah,
then
that's too much for me, honestly, Steven. That's for me, it has to be 24 hours turnaround and
I,
20 to 50
I,
samples.
I, I
That's my
I
number.
think well, yeah, I mean, if you could say that I'll give you 20 to 50 samples and all I have to do is wait a little bit longer, like 3 days, I'd probably do
No,
that off of I mean, I give it to y'all if you could figure it out, but I think that like the reality is people have far, in a B2B sense, people have far lower sample size and turnaround time. So that means that
no, no, you can do it. It just people don't know how to do it. So like for
oh,
me, I can get it done 20 sample size, 24 hours. That's what I wanted to be doing. But you can get it done that way. That is like otherwise how does it work with vibe coding? It doesn't work. It's 3 days forever in the startup building world. Just too
yeah,
slow. No wonder
well,
your expectation is too low. No wonder you're like you don't want to do testing. It's like 3 days. That's like a dinosaur age. That if that's that long, I wouldn't. I would probably not do it too. That's way too long. No, 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 no. You can get
it's
way faster.
because it's more so effort too. Like
Yeah.
if it only took me 5 minutes to basically have the test out and I just wanted to have a longer collection period, that's fine. But in this
Mhm.
case, it's 2 to 3 days, but it's also a byproduct of the effort and the time. So it's like, it's just, it's just hard to go faster sometimes because you have to like, go on the calls and things. But I think the one other thing to consider is like for some institutions or some product software companies, you have a lot of you basically have a problem where you have a lot of I can't say a lot, but you basically have a critical pool of users that are willing to test, right?
Mhm.
But then you have a lot of different teams and product teams all trying to build to
Mhm.
where they want to buy some time from those same users, you know?
Oh no, no one. There's a whole industry of people who are doing this. So
Yeah.
no sweating. The problem is right now it becomes expensive because they are owned by private equity firms. But that's why we exist. We're gonna F them and create a path that's better for it.
I mean, we could
Anyway,
see. Yeah, I think, and again, I think
yeah,
that's going to be more viable with like testing for like anonymous or a broader outside user groups. But for using
yes.
your own users or context based testing, might still be a
Yeah.
challenge, but I still think there's still opportunity to scale. Like the turnaround time is unacceptable, but I think it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
depending on what
Well,
investors.
now that you're asking, I would say it's like this problem used to be solved by a company called usertesting.com. They have a large panel of users where they speak out loud, they download the screen recorders. The turnaround time is about 1 hour. So
Mm,
companies like, like Instagram, I was early, tester with them. They do 2 rounds of testing per day. Every time they order 10 testers. In the morning, they have some ugly wireframe. They order 10 testers, they do the videos, and then at lunch, they fix up, improve second round, go out at 2 p.m., and they improve second day, they do the same thing again. That's why they got acquired about $1 billion with 11 employees because they do rapid usability testing.
yeah,
And that's like, I feel like our generation of product builders, we have that resources to get to the users quickly. But now that's not available to the market anymore because everyone I talk to, those not available. We built usertesting.com. We have actually solved the problem of accessibility to the users is we invented a browser screen recording technology that users don't need to download a screen recorder. Anyone can click on the link and do the user test through their browser, which means you can send this test through a link, through a QR code, through a panel, pop up on your website in your products. So the ways that you can, so like imagine like the user test is no longer a one-time project, it's always on feedback project. So I will set up something on your website in your products to be continuously recruiting people to do the user test. It's a user testing that never turns off. It's always on so that you can collect feedback that way. And then secondly, for your ongoing project, like your like prototype, something you need right away, like something you had to happen today. I need 20 samples, give quick feedback on this prototype. That you threw it through our panel providers and you order people through the incentive program. But the good news is now we can reach out to the bigger panel people because these people don't need to be extrovert that speak out loud. AI will be moderator asking them questions. Secondly, they don't need to be a panel of people who download screen recorder. Anyone with a link can do it. So you can't, it's about, of course, like you can't incentivize them $10 to do the B2C audience. If they are B2B audience, you maybe incentivize them $25, $30. If the incentive is right, people will come and do the test, right?
yeah,
So
fair.
yeah,
Yeah,
so you can like the turnaround maybe typically I see like 2 to 3 hours turnaround for harder to recruit audience. But yeah, we can recruit them. It's not that difficult and you get it done. So and then you also at the same time you have these ongoing customers that on your website, on your product, just continue getting them feedback. Those are the like leave it and forget it feedback. It's just coming in.
yeah, I can see that potentially, but again, it'll be depending on like whether you're testing a optimization with high context or not, you know. But yeah, I do believe there's probably a lot of testing that could be delegated to more of an anonymous or scaled crowd. But yeah, but I also think there's some things where, there's not only the context sometimes, but sometimes like you, especially in the B2B, you have like almost like a design partner style where
Mhm.
you have certain things where it's almost like if you're doing things right, it's almost like you have an aspect of sales. I can't say sales, but if you imagine you have a really big client or institution where you're
Mhm.
working with them and they're a key point of feedback or pain point is the thing that you're trying to improve the usability on. Sometimes it's just simply necessary to kind of re-engage with that client. But that doesn't
The
take
like a
away.
face to face. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
saying totally. You shouldn't stop doing your face to face customer feedback session. I'm just saying like besides that, this is an add-on. Like
Yeah.
if you don't have a standard feedback collection system, this is an add-on to be like fall through. You always have a baseline of always listening to your customer, making sure what the experience you deliver there's always been tested. There's always no surprise. But then everything you do humanly and manually is always a plus, right? So that's why I'm saying like always deliver great experience that's what your customer want, adds value, and is being tested by your customers. That's
That's
what
fair.
we want to do, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. All right, let's go into some rapid fire questions. What's your current user testing tool stack look like? I know you mentioned about the AI version
Yeah.
of that. What's that?
User testing tool stack, I'd say mostly it's again bound to, I mean, we have used tools. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's called like Newton X, where it was more so for qualitative feedback. It was really focused on like more user behavioral feedback and sort of discovery. But for usability testing, honestly, it's been mostly around manual prototyping outside of the AI experience we've done, or manual prototyping with user interviews, or on occasion surveys, or on occasion, using proxy users internally, such as your go-to-market org, to simulate that user testing. But it's typically not a platform. It's typically around prototypes that you walk users through in terms of something you do proactively. Outside of
Yeah.
that, it's been more reactive. Again, looking at click data in the product to see where they kind of land with certain clicks and error rates or completion rates, and then looking at like just user sentiment feedback on your surveys have been the two key areas.
Yeah, totally. I guess how important is the user feedback in terms of building your product? Is that
100%. I think it's the most
100%?
important thing, user feedback. I think that like usability testing, sometimes there's definitely areas where you can use intuition a bit,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd say user feedback, you should have user feedback either informing or validating 100% of what you do
Mm.
is the goal.
Yeah, it's like
Uh,
a guiding light.
Guiding light, yeah.
Yeah, are you doing
Even if
going
some
to the right?
Yeah, even if something's in a category, like let's say for instance, there's a risk to something. Like if you say everything you ship, there's a risk. And the risk is either, it's validated with users and we believe the risk is low in terms of usability woe, or
Mm-hmm.
usability woe is high risk for being bad. You test
Mm-hmm.
those, right? It's how
Mm-hmm.
some people might do it. They might do kind of like trade off to see like if the risk is high enough for them to warrant that testing. But that's a trade off because of either time or cost or some constraint. If you can
Totally.
eliminate time or cost or some constraints, then you should be able to test 100% of what you build. And, that would, so I think that 100% should be the target for 2026 with all of the different tools, even if it's synthetic or like, even if it, some form of testing based on user. I'm going to call it user based testing
Mm-hmm.
should happen. It's a very
Yeah.
clever word here. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think the reality is probably lower, but I think that should be the target.
that's great. If you had a magic wand, what's
Mm.
one thing that could make gathering human feedback from your global user base dramatically easier?
I think it's going to definitely be always users with context that are always available would be the magic wand. The reason being is, I think the context can definitely be important depending on what you're doing, more so on the things for user usability. For user feedback, I think that it's a lot easier to scale into anonymous users.
Yeah,
That's easy
yeah,
to scale.
totally.
But for usability testing, specifically for workflow completion or task completion, that's going to be a little bit contextual unless you invented like, unless your product literally is Fisher Price or your product is like Chat GPT itself, where the user is always using like a text-based input or something, right? Where
Mhm.
the barrier for a user testing that is like any user that chats with their mom or their family members, right?
Right, right.
But yeah, the biggest barrier will be availability of users to complete the test. It's the availability of users to complete the test.
Great, got it. All right, as a wrap up, what's the most fulfilling part of building the infrastructure for the future of global wealth management for you?
I'd say most of them. So I joined Addepar way back in the day because of the idea that like their software that their software gets into hands of more users means that more people get to their financial outcomes, right? So by having more users using the best technology for their customers, which are typically people like me and you, that makes the world's finance work a lot better. So for me, it's kind of like because we're almost at the rate of invention so much faster now, and we're building so much, and people are finding like new like ways to get around resistant bacterias and new ways to do these breakthroughs. I think that there's going to be more and more breakthroughs that make wealth more accessible or financial advice more accessible to more and more people. So I look forward to continuing to invent ways to just make more people financial savvy and do the best they can with the money that they earn.
That's awesome. That's great. Make everybody rich, right? That's
Everybody
awesome.
great possible.
Yeah, that's
Their best,
awesome.
or the best version of themselves.
That's awesome. Best version, best financial savvy version of
Best
themselves.
version, financial savvy version of yourself. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Stephen. Thank
Yeah.
you for
Sure.
showing us how your product is being built behind the why, behind the what, And for those listening, if you are ready to start vibe testing your products at the speed of the code, make sure you're building the right thing for your right audience. Visit us at theysaid.io. You can start testing for free. I'm Lee Hong Hicken, and this is UX Stories. I will see you at the next episode.